Ecological Association of Washington, and tonight I'll go through some club news and also some news stories about fungi and a couple little pop culture tidbits. And then Annie Weissman's going to do our virtual ID table today. Tom McCoy has news from the photo contest that we ran this year. And then we've got 4 different members of the DNA committee, all club members who've been working on getting DNA sequences for mushrooms that we've found this year. And they're going to talk about what they've found. And if there's some time, John Harper may talk some more about other mushrooms that we should be finding at this time of year and sort of how to figure that out. We just have one thing scheduled right now, which is a mushroom beer workshop this weekend that's sold out, but there is a waiting list. If you go on the website and you're logged in as a member, you should be able to see that event and register for the waiting list. But mostly I wanted to mention this to make the plea that if you ever sign up for an event like this brewing workshop or a foray, and then you realize that you're not going to be able to make it, please do go back in on the website and cancel your registration, because we do keep these wait lists. And the only way we let someone else in to go to that event is if you go in and cancel. And so it's no fun to have no shows and then realize we could have let more people in. So
one way to find out about that is that the confirmation you get that you're registered has at the bottom a link to allow you to manage your reservation, and that's the way to get back into it to change it.
I have a bunch of sort of save the date dates for next year that are larger events that are already scheduled. These are all weekend long or even a little longer, and they're all bunched up in August and September. So the one we really want you to know most about is that our club does its weekend foray over Labor Day weekend up in Pennsylvania. It's a great event. So save the date if you're able to make it Labor Day weekend, and there will be much more information about that next year. But because it's a holiday weekend, it's good to sort of be aware of it far in advance. The West Virginia Mushroom Club has a great foray out of Blackwater Falls. The North American Mycological Association's annual foray is in Hendersonville, North Carolina this year. So that's sort of within reach of here, but right up against ours. And then the Northeast Mycological Federation, which some people call NEMF, is holding their annual foray in Kerhonks in New York this year. And then the Western Pennsylvania Club has a foray named after Gary Linkoff that's going to be right at the end of September. So you could pretty much go every week if you wanted to for 2 months, just about, or every other. But these are all great events, and various club members have been to various of them. If you have questions and you post them in the chat right now, probably folks that have been to any of them could chime in. And as I get closer, maybe we can talk about carpooling to some of them if folks are interested. The big club news is that we just had our official election for the board. It was not a contested slate, so no big news actually, but this is the group of folks that'll be running things for MAWDC next year, and a big thanks to all of them for stepping up and spending their time helping make everything happen next year. Many of these should be familiar faces, but if you're a member, you should have gotten an email that also sort of had little bios for everyone, because I know we haven't been doing as much in person, so I thought that would be nice for everyone to get a little more familiar with your board. And I also just wanted to say a big thank you to the 3 people who are rotating off the board this year. Connie, John, and William were all on the board when I joined many years ago. So they have all been serving for a long time and definitely deserve a break. But thank you to the many years that you put into making the club what it is now. It's grown a lot while you've been here. And I know John's going to stick around, especially, and has some special projects that he's working on. So you have not seen the last of him, but he will not be the program chair anymore next year. So thank you to all three of you. I'm going to take a quick break, actually, and let Megan Romberg talk about the research grant recipients. MA has a research grant fund that we invite graduate students to apply for, and we've just awarded some research grants. And Megan's the chair of that committee.
So yeah, we have 3 great projects that we're funding this year. It's pretty exciting. This is our 2nd year of funding research grants, and it's cool that we got such really good applications. They were really well done and comprehensive, and we're excited to be funding these. So the first one here is Amy Robleski. She's at the Pennsylvania State University, and her project is in sort of an anthropology ecology group, and she wants to figure out who's hunting for mushrooms in the Mid-Atlantic region, estimate changes in participation since March of 2020, and determine where people are getting their information and gaps that could lead to misidentifications and poisonings. Her hypothesis is that a lot of people started mushroom hunting during COVID and may not know authoritative places to go, and just wants to see where are people getting their information and how are they going about foraging. The second project that we're funding is Daniel Teratut at the Commonwealth University of Pennsylvania. And he's looking at mining the decomposition biome of spotted lanternflies. So he's basically going to go out and find spotted lanternflies, especially those that are showing fungal growth, and try to identify the fungi that are on these dead carcasses. And he's going to look for larvae and egg masses and other things, and try to find entomopathogenic fungi that are associated with the dead samples and the dead insects, and figure out whether any of them could be used as biocontrol for spotted lanternfly, which is becoming an increasing problem in Pennsylvania and other states. And then our third recipient is at Clark University, and his research is looking at the functional and genetic basis of nematophagy, eating nematodes, in the Pleurotaceae. And so Pleurotus and Hohenbulia are members of the Pleurotaceae. And a lot of fungi have some antagonist or predator-prey reaction with nematodes. And the idea is that they're consuming these nematodes in order to increase their nitrogen consumption. So as much as nematodes eat fungi, fungi in some cases also eat nematodes. And so the toxins that Pleurotus uses to paralyze the nematodes before they're consumed haven't been well characterized. There was a compound that's been postulated as the toxin, but that hasn't actually been proven. And so this research will be looking into the chemicals and the metabolites that are being produced by Pleurotus, and seeing which ones actually are involved in paralyzing the nematodes. So we look forward to seeing all 3 of them. As part of getting a research grant, we expect a presentation to MAWDC. So over the next year, we should be hearing from all 3 of them, and congratulations to all of them.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. And maybe Tom McCoy or someone else could grab the link to the survey that first recipient is doing. Amy had sent it out and was curious to get some feedback from our club members about your foraging. We're about to have our first board meeting with the new board, and so I will put this out there again, that if you have ideas about what we ought to be doing in 2023, and especially if you are happy to step up and do that thing that you want to suggest, we would love to hear about it. We do have funding to do different things within the club, as well as to give it away. So let us know if you've got ideas about new stuff that we should be doing. All right, so fungi in the news. I've got a bunch of interesting stuff this month. Hopefully it won't take too long. So we had an election last month, and Colorado narrowly passed a ballot initiative to decriminalize psilocybin. Folks over the age of 21 will be able to grow and possess psilocybin mushrooms. The only place that they are legal for sale, I believe, will be these state regulated centers where you can have sort of a guided appointment so you consume psilocybin. I don't think they've worked out the details on what that will be like. They will not be available in dispensaries, apparently. But I thought that this article by the local PBS station was interesting because it said that some of the folks that had been behind the cannabis legalization in Colorado actually, and who are theoretically in support of other forms of decriminalization, didn't actually support this proposition because apparently it was being really aggressively funded by out-of-state groups. And there's a lot of money behind some of this stuff, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next few years. There's another clinical trial published on psilocybin last month in the New England Journal of Medicine, along with an editorial in that issue of the New England Journal. This particular study was with synthetic psilocybin, and I think it was the largest clinical trial to date. They did have some positive results, but also some reported side effects and things that they lay out in the article. The editorial is very cautious and sort of saying, like, we're getting all these great results with these sort of bespoke clinical trials, but the people running the guided trips are sort of the best of the best, and what's going to happen if we actually legalize and try to get this to scale, and would we actually see the same results in real practice, which is an interesting question. So that's worth a look if you want to get your free trial to the New England Journal, or if you have access somehow. The New York Times ran an article back in the beginning of November about some scientists who are sort of questioning the messaging around sort of the wood wide web and the concept that trees are talking to each other and proactively helping each other, and sort of asking people some of these scientists are asking people to dial it back from that rhetoric and saying sort of, there's other possible explanations for what's going on. And maybe it's really that the fungi are interested in keeping the trees around them healthy, because the trees are giving them things, and not so much that the trees are just being benevolent. So, there's a lot of ongoing research in this area, and it's good to get both sides of the story sometimes. But they also do, quote people like Suzanne Simard sort of saying, no, really, we've done a lot of work on this, and we think there is something here. So take a look at that if you're curious. And then the Times just recently ran a really touching article about people who are mushrooming in Ukraine, often, in forests that are full of landmines, and sort of that push and pull of like, I want my life back. I want to be going out, even though it's dangerous, and I don't want this to be another thing that has been taken away from me by the war. So it's a beautiful but sad article, I would say. This one came through my feed. There's this CNN article is sort of the layperson's version, and then a very technical article in a journal called Science Advances. So this group was looking for something besides plastic to mount electronics on, right? All of our computer chips and things are all plastic based. And they took this part of Ganoderma that apparently, I've never noticed this, I'll have to look for it, but apparently Ganoderma, where it meets up with its substrate, sort of grows a skin of hyphae, which they think is probably like keeping other things out from that opening in the wood or whatever. And they figured out how to put down a mesh between the Ganoderma, the skin that the Ganoderma is growing and the substrate, and they were growing it just on, excuse me, on sawdust, I believe, like waste product. And they were able to grow out this skin and then use it and mount electronic components on it. And it's super heat resistant. So it's viable in that way. And it's, you know, biodegradable, not made out of petroleum. This is definitely like just in the testing out whether this is even feasible stage, but it was a cool project to read about. A fungi protein association has formed. I just thought I would mention this real quick. There are a lot of companies right now coming up with meat alternative products that are mushroom based. And apparently they now have their own trade association. Vogue reviewed a new mushroom cookbook. I'm sure there are others out there, but this is the one that popped up in my newsfeed, so I thought I'd throw it in here. The photography for it looks gorgeous. I can't vouch for any of the recipes, but I believe that it was a positive review in Vogue. This was kind of a cool idea, using the enoki as the noodles in an Alfredo sauce. And then Rick Silver sent me this. I believe it was his mother-in-law, a family member over Thanksgiving was watching the show Chicago PD. And at the end of this episode, the one that aired on November 16th, two police are walking down into this cellar and they see all of these mushrooms growing on the ground, and they look at each other and they immediately know to start digging because they're looking for a dead body. And I believe they don't say this in the end of the episode. It's sort of a cliffhanger, prepping you for, I'm sure they'll be talk about it more next episode, or maybe not. Maybe they've just found the body and they don't need to talk about the mushrooms. But I believe what they're trying to represent is this mushroom, the corpse finder, which is a Heboloma, which is known to pop up around like deer carcasses or other dead bodies. It really likes the high nitrogen environment of that decomposition. But if you look at the mushrooms that they were digging up, they do not look like this Heboloma to me. I think that the props people went out to the grocery store and bought a bunch of king oyster mushrooms and planted them in the dirt for these people to dig up, which just amused me to no end. But it was a fun little pop culture moment for the mushrooms to show up in this cop show. And then my last piece of news is just that mycologist named Tom Volk passed away this month, and many of us interacted with him over the years. If you've been around for a while, you've probably come across his website, Tom Volk's Fungi. It was one of the first mushroom websites that was up on the web, and he kept it going for many years. One of my favorite things about it is that on many of the fungi, he has a little audio file telling you how to pronounce the Latin name, which is pretty great. If you get a chance, the Ologies podcast, which interviews scientists of all kinds, just recently posted an interview with him that's really charming. And he also has a TED talk about the fact that he had a heart transplant, but manages to weave mushrooms into that TED talk as well. So that's worth checking out. So for the last thing, I wanted to share with you some stuff from one of the pages of Tom's website, Fungi that are necessary for a Merry Christmas. And he points out, he has many more actually on this page on his site, but baking and alcohol both rely on yeast, which is a fungus. Chocolate, I did not know, but apparently part of the chocolate processing process is that they are sort of fermented with yeasts. Christmas trees are all mycorrhizal, so you need mushrooms to be able to grow a Christmas tree. And the reindeer, Santa's reindeer, are all up in the tundra eating reindeer lichen Cladonia species. So I thought that was a sweet list and seasonal. And if anyone wants to do a Hanukkah or Diwali list for next year, let me know. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and turn things over to Annie for her mushroom ID.